Hello and welcome to this round 11 here at Grand Prix Copenhagen, and we were talking about all of the different decks in the format. At 9 and 1 we get a chance to see Bogdan Velostrogov with Spirits up against Remy Lefrancois on Dredge. Dredge is a deck that we've seen a fair amount of. Spirits though, I mean, is this a port of the kind of blue-white Spirits deck we saw from Standard? Is it something else? I guess we're going to wait and see.
I believe there's a very good card, Droxcall Captain. 1 mana, 1 mana, blue and white, gives all of your spirits +1/+1 and a hexproof.
We know that hexproof is a powerful ability. Of course, the whole of the Boggles deck basically built around the idea that if your opponent can't target your creatures and you can, that's a happy place to be. Interesting to see how it will play up against Dredge here. Dredge quite happy to play a game plan where it doesn't necessarily need to cast very many spells. If it's got creatures in the graveyard that it's dredging and then maybe a Bloodghast, it doesn't have to do too much in order to get creatures in play. Once it gets creatures in play, it can beat down pretty hard. We'll see whether or not Spirits is able to fight off that fairly well. I mean, given that Spirits Drogskull Captain has white in it, we know that the Spirits deck is likely to have good sideboard cards, but in game 1, Faithless Looting here coming from Remy, we'll see what Bogdan's able to say about that. Looks like a Prized Amalgam and a Bloodghast going to the graveyard. This is exactly what I'm talking about not needing to cast very many spells. Remy Lefrancois here threatening to get 2 creatures on the battlefield simply by playing a land next turn. And Mausoleum Wanderer, the play from Bogdan Velostrogov, that will be able to be sacrificed to counter spells, but how many of them we're going to see, not quite sure. I guess in the meantime it does also get pumped by playing Spirits, so you get to attack in for more damage. A land comes along and Remy Lefrancois there kind of tapping the Prized Amalgam in his graveyard, basically just to remind himself that at the end of turn he will get a chance to put that Prized Amalgam into play tapped. Faithless Looting is going to be putting another Prized Amalgam in the graveyard by the looks of things. It may be that Remy Lefrancois was a little quick to put that land into play this turn.
Yeah, when you're playing Dredge, sometimes you just want to wait till you play all of your spells before playing the second land, just because of Bloodghast. But no, as it is a fetch land, it doesn't seem to matter all that much. Actually, the way it goes this time around, he gets the Bloodghast back, the first Prized Amalgam triggers, then he plays Faithless Looting, discards another Prized Amalgam. That one has not been triggered yet, but because of the Prized Amalgam that comes back at the end of turn, the second one will trigger, and that one will actually come back at the end of Bogdan's turn.
Yeah, the first Prized Amalgam, seeing the second one there. You've played some Dredge, haven't you?
Yep.
It was one of the decks that you played at, was it your Nationals qualifier?
Yeah, World Magic Cup qualifier.
That's the one. A very potent deck, and it's funny how Dredge has gone through lots of different stages in its history. Obviously, when Bridge from Below and Cabal Therapy and so on were around, it was winning very, very quickly indeed. Then there was the slight pitch shift that it took. These days, Prized Amalgam, a key piece in the puzzle. Selfless Spirit coming down here for Bogdan Velostrogov, pumps the Mausoleum Wanderer, and of course also means that mass removal a little bit harder to use against these spirits. Remy activating his Bloodstained Mire at the end of turn. You can see there that he's put his graveyard front and center here. That's not normally where you'd see graveyards in a modern match, but because the graveyard's such a key piece of what this Dredge deck trying to achieve, it's a little bit more prominent than usual.
Yeah, basically your graveyard is your hand in one way or another with the Dredge deck. It's so important to know how many Faithless Looting there are left, how many Dredge cards there are left, how many creatures are coming back, and it's a big part. Usually your hand is actually a bunch of useless cards which you don't care too much about.
Which you almost want to be in the graveyard because that's where they're really getting active. So Life from the Loam getting dredged here. So 3 new cards going to the graveyard, and one of those is Narcomoeba, another one is a Prized Amalgam. And a Stinkweed Imp in the graveyard now. Those Faithless Lootings in the graveyard cost 3 to flashback. If he's got a land to play this turn, then he will be able to start dredging with that Stinkweed Imp. Swings there, no blocks from Bogdan. He's kind of in a racing situation here, at least for now.
I'm starting to have the feeling that the banning of Golgari Gravetroll was actually a good thing for Dredge.
Interesting.
Because now that Golgari Grave Troll is gone, people have trimmed down on the Graveyard Hate, have trimmed down on Anger of the Gods, and all of a sudden the dredge deck is just there. I mean, it got a little bit worse, but it's still functioning. It's still putting creatures into play for free. It's still dredging. Okay, sure, it's dredging less cards than it was before, but it's still working out fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Basically, we're saying that the deck is worse, but it may be better positioned in the metagame.
Yep.
I mean, I've certainly heard Simon Gertzen talking about its matchup against Death Shadow being pretty positive. Conflagrate there being played for X is 0, simply to get it in the graveyard for future flashing back.
Yeah, Bogdan not having the best of draws. Does have a Moorland Hound, I believe, which can make some more spirits.
Yeah, you can play a white and a blue and tap it, exile a creature from your graveyard to make a 1/1 spirit token. Yeah, these Mausoleum Wanderers, there are matchups where I'm sure that they're great, but I'm not convinced that this is necessarily one of them. I mean, countering a Conflagrate that would kill them anyway. I mean, you've also got your Selfless Spirit that can deal with Conflagrate if it's aimed at those creatures. The main thing is here that the creatures that Remy Lefrancois has are sized just appropriately that it makes blocking tricky, and he's actually threatening a pretty quick clock here. He's potentially attacking for 12 with Bogdan on just 11 life, so there will have to be some blocking pretty shortly.
Yeah, and that's the problem with playing against the dredge deck. Even if you get rid of the creatures, they just keep on coming back. It's very easy to get back a Bloodcast, so killing that one is pretty useless, and the Price Amalgam doesn't take too much effort either. With 4 Narcomoeba and 4 Bloodghast.
So a straightforward set of attacks here for Remy Lefrancois. Doesn't need to do anything all that clever in this game. He's simply enacting his game plan and hasn't really seen any disruption of a note from the other side of the table from these spirits.
Yeah, and Bogdan knows that he has to start blocking sometime. Like, if he doesn't block, he's dead on board. So he takes 8, goes down to 3. But still facing quite a lot of creatures. At least he got rid of the Narcomoeba, and that's one that is not coming back.
It's done its work.
Yep.
It brought along a body with it. Narcomoeba, one of the cards. There was a strange influx of cards that made Dredge a completely different beast that all came out of Future Sight. You had Bridge from Below, Narcomoeba, and so on, that were just absolute powerhouses in earlier iterations of the deck, and Narcomoeba still continues to do so. Bridge from Below is legal in Modern. You don't really tend to see it all that much anymore.
No, it was played like in the early versions of this dredge deck. Some of them played it, but I think it just didn't do enough to really be there. And there's just too many creatures dying anyway for it to get removed.
Well, the first game going to Remy Lefrancois, kind of going straightforward fashion, able to take down Bogdan Velostrogov in game 1. He will, of course, have to win another game to pick up this match, but we will be back after these messages. Hello and welcome back to this round 11 here at Grand Prix Copenhagen. The format is modern, and Remy Lefrancois with his dredge deck already up a game against Bogdan Velostrogov. We will go back and see more of that soon enough, but in the meantime, Emmanuel Geshensen is just up against Grixis Delve, and it looks like that game just completing also. Grixis Delve able to do it. The lightning bolt just finishing off Geshensen, who is one of the players with some of the most experience with this most recent iteration of Jund Death Shadow. He was a player name-checked to me by Magnus Lanto as someone to look out for with the Death Shadow deck. Both Lanto and Geshensen on, well, not a perfect record, but pretty close to, toward the top of the standings. So both players to watch out for in this format. But with both of our on-camera matches kind of shuffling up at the same time, we get to have a little bit of a think about sideboarding. And I can't help but think that this Spirits deck, it's got white in it. It doesn't appear to be, in and of itself, that worried about protecting its graveyard. I would not be at all surprised to see a rest in peace from this Spirits player. And I think that if it comes to tweaks for Remy Francois, a lot of it will be about making sure that whatever sideboarding Bogdan is going in for is not quite so effective.
Yeah, indeed, it's kind of the problem with Dredge. Like game 1, you're favored against most of the decks, but game 2, you're so dependent on how much hate your opponent brings. Well, because it got worse, people are playing less of the rest in pieces and Leyline of the Voids and such as, but it's still something you have to keep in mind. You basically always bring in some security, even though you're not sure your opponent is bringing it in, just because it's so well. It just makes you lose on the spot. I mean, if you cannot answer a rest in peace, your game plan is what? Playing Prized Amalgams, playing Bloodghast, but you're not going to race with that. So you need to kill the rest in peace. It will already have done some damage, but at least you can start rebuilding after killing it.
Yeah, we will see soon enough, of course. And even if you happen to have boarded in lots of hate cards for the Dredge matchup, one of the challenges, of course, is you need to draw them on time, because one of the things that Dredge has going for it is it can get its game plan going very quickly indeed. If you see an early Insolent Neonate, for example, you may have all of your action going on from as early as the first or second turn. If that's the case, then there's really not that much opportunity to punish the Dredge deck. If those Prized Amalgams are already in play, then rest in peace may not be the right answer.
No, but they might be waiting in the graveyard for something to make them alive. I don't know. And then rest in peace comes just in time. I mean, on the play, turn 2 is certainly fast enough. On the draw, it might be a little bit slow, and I already see one rest in peace. If you wait till turn 2 on the draw, your opponent might have played a Cathartic Reunion already, might have dredged some already, and then it could be too slow. The best one is obviously Leyline of the Void. That's the best one you can have, because you just, stop them before they even started. In one way, it's not the best one, because they can hold on till they have enough gas and then kill the Leyline and then start going. Whereas with Rest in Peace, they might be halfway there, already drop some Fadeless Lootings in the graveyard, maybe have one Bloodghast waiting there, and if you then remove it, it's gone forever. But I think the best one is still Leyline of the Void, but I can't find for a reason for when you're playing a white deck to play Leyline of the Void. I mean, Rest in Peace has some other uses that you're looking for, and 2 mana is still not that much.
Now it looks like from Bogdan Velostrogov's hand, he's currently shuffling Remy Lefrancois deck, who's on a mulligan here. Bogdan, I believe, does have a couple of copies of Jogstar Captain, and that really might change the face of these post-sideboard games, because one thing that you can do against Dredge, which is fairly effective, is simply presenting creatures that have 4 toughness. Once you can start blocking Prized Amalgams, there aren't so many really gigantic creatures in these Dredge decks at this point. And at that point, he may be able to get things going, even if they're playing a comparatively fair game. Looks like Remy has decided to keep his 6. Will this Scry be to the top or the bottom? Going to the bottom there. Seachrome Coast leading to an Ether Vial. Ether Vial, a potent one. You can see there's already the die ready for Bogdan Velostrogov here. He'll gradually tick up counters on it, and it means that he gets to play his Spirits sort of for free, but also with Flash. Just tapping the Ether Vial there. Rest in Peace in hand for Bogdan Velostrogov. only has a creeping tar pit for turn 2. I guess it would have been a bit of a decision for him. Do you play the tar pit on 1 so that you can have 2 untapped lands on turn 2 and play Rest in Peace?
I think I would have gone for the creeping tar pit, because turn 2 Rest in Peace is just so crucial. You stop your opponent right there. Now on turn 3, he's kind of lucky that his opponent did not have a Fatalist Looting or a Neonate on turn 1, so it will still be in time, but it's kind of risky. I couldn't imagine him running more than 22, 23 lands with either Vial in his deck, so there's still quite a high chance he doesn't draw a second land, and now he's gotta wait for another turn, which is also another turn where he can lose his Rest in Peace to discard spells like Thoughtseize.
It's certainly something we've seen from some dredge lists. There are obviously variations between various different dredge lists, but in preparation for this event, dredge is kind of a known deck, so Bogdan should have a fair idea of what's coming out of it here. Spirits, on the other hand, is not quite as universally played. There's a very real chance that Remy Lefrancois is still uncertain exactly what he's going to be up against. A fairly low impact turn here from the Frenchman, just casting Life from the Loam to get back a land. And end of turn, Mausoleum of Wonder comes into play off an Ether Vial, which is now ticked up to 2. No third land, but there is that Rest in Peace and 3 copies of Drogskull Captain in hand, so I think that we're likely to see that Ether Vial tick up to 3 soon enough.
And once you have 2 Drogskull Captains, they protect each other, so it's very hard to get rid of them.
Now, Remy Lefrancois here, we'll find out how much enchantment removal he's brought in. I can assume that there must be some. I mean, against a white deck, you know that there's the potential for Rest in Peace. Simply casts Prized Amalgam. Someone in the chat was asking whether or not it's possible for the Dredge deck to cast its blue-black zombies, and there are definitely some lists that don't have as much access to blue mana. In this instance, the 3-mana 3/3 just coming down.
Trained Armadon.
Mausoleum Wanderer getting cast by Bogdan Velostrogov. 3 copies of Drogskull Captain already in hand. Looks like he's electing not to put it into play just for an extra little bit of damage here from the Mausoleum Wanderer's ability in addition to the Drogskull Captain's pump, but simply just saying, you know what, I want to have the opportunity to flash it in and maybe surprise someone.
Yeah, and he also got Spell Queller, so he might be looking to counter something with that one. And there's a lot of advantage in waiting till the end of turn, get in the Drogskull Captain and play the second one before your opponent can react. I mean, if he knows about the first one, he might have something like Lightning Axe. But if he doesn't know you're gonna play one end of turn and one in your main phase, he might tap out to play something, and then you just get 2 untargetable creatures, which grow your whole army.
I mean, right now, I guess, he knows he's got Rest in Peace in play. He knows that if that stays in play, he ought to be winning this game. So it may just be a question of the Spell Queller he has in hand is there specifically to protect that Rest in Peace. Casting a Stinkweed Imp. Stinkweed Imp actually kind of an interesting one that it's not going to care how big any of those spirits get. If it gets in a fight with them, it will be able to trade.
And it seems like Bogdan is going to respond to that.
Uses a Spell Queller on it, so shields down if there was a Nature's Claim or similar there for Rest in Peace.
Yeah, but I think Bogdan's army is going to be too big this turn. He's going to use the Vial to put in 1 Captain, tap 3 to put in the second one, and then attack for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage in the air. And all of his creatures will have hexproof, so this is pretty big.
It's actually a little bit more than that even, because the Mausoleum Wanderers get pumped. So they're each 3/3s, they're each 5/5s. He's attacking for 14 here.
Yeah, not too bad. I'm liking the look of the Spirits deck. It seems to be something fun to play.
Yeah, it's Ether Vial, one of those cards that is powerful enough to me that it almost feels a little underplayed in this modern format. You see it in Merfolk a little bit. We saw a couple of other lists toying around with it, but it's not found the same kind of home in Modern that many of the really powerful cards have, largely because it puts some sort of kind of deck building restrictions on you. You really want to make sure that you keep drawing creatures, not have too many spells in there to gum up the works. This Spirits deck has creatures that function as spells, and so it's able to use the Ether Vial fairly neatly. We are going to get a chance to see some of Emanuel Geshensen here against David Murphy. Jund Death Shadow versus Grixis Death Shadow. The Jund list here is splashing for Lingering Souls. We can see it already exiled. There's a couple of spirits in play for Geshensen here. Two slightly different styles of Death Shadow. The Grixis list often has more delve creatures, but with additional abilities to search your deck with Traverse the Ulvenwald, and often more access to things like Teemo Battle Rage in the main. The Jund Death Shadow one is the one that I consider to kind of be the classic list.
Yeah, I think I like the Jund one a little bit better, because you, especially in the mirror, Death Shadow is so important that having 8 copies in total because of Traverse the Ulvenwald is just a lot better. I think Grixis Death Shadow was advantage because it had counters, but it seems like for example, Emmanuel is also running blue, as I believe, for Stubborn Denial. So the Jund can still run it. It just takes a little bit more. But the green, I like a lot in the mirror.
Another card that we've seen do good work in the mirror and presumably in other matchups as well is Antoine Royal's Invitational card, able to search up 2 copies of Death Shadow at a moment's notice if needed. Marcel Carvalho working with that one. As things stand though, Emanuel Geshensen here simply getting stuck in with spirits. You talked earlier on about how this is a matchup where sometimes you end up feeling a little foolish for sneaking in extra points of damage just because it means that future Death Shadows on the other side of the table are more effective. Be interested to see whether or not it works out that way in this matchup.
And Emmanuel, he drew a Traverse the Ulvenwald, but he's only got 2 card types in his graveyard because of Nihil Spellbomb. So actually a good cyber card from David Murphy there.
Graveyard Hate actually very potent against a lot of Death Shadow lists. Tarmogoyf is not very exciting without a graveyard. Likewise, Traverse the Ulvenwald can get sniped. And if you're looking to do things with Liliana of the Last Hope to get back some of your threats, well, that's not going to work so well if you've not got a graveyard to work with. Snapcaster Mage, of course, also caring about the graveyard. Getting hit by an Abrupt Decay here. It was able to let David Murphy play things from his graveyard too, so it got some value, but maybe not as much as he would have hoped for. Some of you might know David Murphy as David C. He does some streaming online. Popular player for if you're looking to watch sort of during daytime European time zones, not necessarily if you're waiting for the Americans to wake up and start streaming. David Murphy, a good person to check out. So our Grixis Death Shadow mirror continuing, but we've heard our first matches kicking off, and I do want to see how this Spirits deck does in Game 3 against Dredge. So we're going to jump back across and see how Bogdan Velostrogov, now on the draw, does against Remy Lefrancois on Dredge. He's already had a Faithless Looting to get a prized amalgam into the graveyard. Will we see an early rest in peace this time? It's a colourless land there from Bogdan Velostrogov to power out an Ether Vial. Looks like it might be a Gaia Reach Sanitarium, I think. Now, playing a colourless land on turn 1, a little bit awkward, potentially signalling issues with being able to cast the multicoloured spells in Velostrogov's deck here.
And once again, no Dredger for Remy, but he didn't need it last time around, but he had the Bloodghast and the Amalgam that time. This time he's only got the Amalgam, and that one is not coming back without any help. So let's see if Remy can actually find either Dredgers or a Bloodghast to put into the graveyard.
Now it's a bit of a sort of a challenge here for Remy in terms of his thinking. So he casts a Conflagrate for 0 there, prepping for a future turn so that he can potentially deal with the creatures coming from Velostrogov's deck. But he doesn't want to get too much in the graveyard, because if this turn is a Rest in Peace turn, he could lose a bunch of useful tools.
It seems like Bogdan does not have the Rest in Peace, so we might have a game here. But Remy's draw seems very slow and weak. I feel like he must have a mulligan, because I don't think you can keep a hand without a Dredger or something that really gets you going. I mean, you can obviously keep the hand with Cathartic Reunion, double Priced Amalgam and a Bloodghast, but if you have only the Priced Amalgam, it's kind of risky.
So you saw a Mausoleum Wanderer flashed in using Ether Vial in order to be able to counter that Faithless Looting flashback, and then Rattle Change flashed in. That means that now, even ignoring Ether Vial, Bogdan Velostrogov is able to cast any of his spirits with Flash. Casting them at any time certainly makes life a little bit fiddlier for Remy Lefrancois. Lots of interesting techie cards in this spirits list. What can Remy Lefrancois put together here? He's not really had anything much to write home about just yet. Cathartic Reunion discarding 2 copies of Dakmor Salvage. All right, so he's got some dredgers. These probably are the more or less the bottom of the barrel in terms of dredgers that are likely to actually see play in a dredge deck.
They got a little extra use because of Bloodghast, because it's a land, so you dredge a land, which makes sure you can play it and return the Bloodghast. Another one we see there is Vengeful Pharaoh. That's actually a good one against the Spirit deck. It means that whenever Bogdan attacks with a creature, Remy gets to destroy one, and then the Vengeful Pharaoh will come to the top of the deck of Remy Lefrancois.
So Cathartic Reunion enabling a lot of dredging there, discarding dredgers and then immediately replacing draw steps to dredge them back to hand. So a slightly fuller graveyard here, but you know what? In terms of a graveyard with that many cards, it's not the most exciting that I've seen from a dredge deck just recently.
No, still no Bloodghast, still no Narcomoeba. The Priced Amalgams are waiting in the wings, but he might go for a Conflagrate here, trying to kill off the Spirit before it gets hexproof itself.
So many different ways that this can go wrong.
Yeah.
Because with the Rattle Chains in play, every Spirit has Flash, which means that the number of different things that could cause this to go wrong include flashing in a Mausoleum Wanderer and getting it big enough that it can simply counter the spell. Flashing in another Rattle Chains to give that Rattle Chains hexproof. Flashing in Drogskull Captain to give all other spirits hexproof. Flashing in a Spell Queller to counter the spell, also exile the spell. This is, if he's going for a Conflagrate, there are a lot of ways that it can go wrong.
Or flashing in Selfless Spirit and Sacrifice.
Yep, that one also counts. I believe that there's a Selfless Spirit in hand, so if that's the option that he's going for, it's pretty risky. Yes, he's going for a Life in the Loam instead. Plenty of lands to get back, and they will make future Conflagrates all the better.
Yeah, this dredge deck, while it has explosive draws, it also has some kind of game in the late game because of Life from the Loam together with Conflagrate. Especially against decks like this with so many 1 and 2 toughness creatures, you actually have a game besides being very aggressive, but it's not going to be easy once he puts in enough spirits that either they have Shroud or are big enough to survive a big Conflagrate.
Looks like Bogdan Velostrogov here making an effort to fully understand how Vengeful Pharaoh works. It is an unusual card that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see every game from Dredge, but a powerful one and kind of the beginning of the current modern era of mummies being part of the zombie pantheon. So it's a Death Touch 5/4 when it's in play, but more important when it's in the graveyard. Whenever combat damage is dealt to you or a planeswalker you control, if it's in the graveyard, destroy target attacking creature, then put Vengeful Pharaoh on the top of your library. There you see the Vengeful Pharaoh. Another card that we probably ought to just run through what it does, though I don't think it's necessarily going to be super relevant just yet in this matchup, is Gaia Reach Sanitarium. That one means that you can pay 2 and tap it to make each player draw a card, then discard a card. Letting the dredge deck dredge more cards, not something that I think we're likely to see all that much of.
Well, it seems like he's not afraid. I think he's using it. And he also gets to discard afterwards. So that's indeed not what you want to be doing against dredge.
Yeah, I mean, the dredge deck goes out of its way to play effects like this itself. I think there's an argument for a dredge deck considering Gaia Reach Sanitarium for its own mana base. I guess that the dark side of this is this could be Bogdan running the Rope-a-Dope, letting dredge put more cards in the graveyard to then remove with a big rest in peace.
And the problem is that Bogdan does not really have a way around the Vengeful Pharaoh at this point, so he needs to find enough creatures to put into play. Seems like he did find a Lingering Soul, so that's a start. He also has a Zealous Persecution, so if he can find enough spirits, he might be able to kill Remy in one big hit.
The other thing worth noting is that Vengeful Pharaoh does target, which means that if he can give his team hexproof, then he may be able to fizzle that ability, counter it on resolution. Rattle Chains, meaning that if you play that at instant speed, when it comes into play, it gives target spirit you control hexproof until the end of turn. Likewise, of course, Goal Captain would be able to give his team hexproof.
Seems like he's actually going for it. Oh, wow. Not afraid of the Vengeful Pharaoh. Here we're gonna see it. Gonna destroy the Selfless Spirit. Of course, no reason to target the Rattle Chain there, because that gives your opponent the choice whether or not he wants to sacrifice the Selfless Spirits or not. So it's always good to target the Selfless Spirit itself. It gives your opponent less of a choice.
So Velostrogov there playing his Lingering Souls. That one has the potential to come back soon enough. Get a couple of spirit tokens.
I'm not really sure I like that attack from Bogdan. Especially because now Conflagrate will just kill off all of the other spirits. So I think I would have loved just keeping back on my Selfless Spirit. It's only 2 damage. It's not like Remy is close to dying. He's still at 11 life. But this way you just give him a very big Conflagrate. He kind of has to be afraid of either Vial flashing in another Selfless Spirit, but even that is not like the worst thing to happen.
So Nakamiba comes in. You can see those 2 copies of Prized Amalgam getting ready to enter the battlefield at the end of turn here. Lots of mana available for Remy Lefrancois here. He has been using Life from the Loam pretty judiciously to get back lands where he can. If there is a Conflagrate here, it could be a big one. And the number of things that can go wrong with just Ether Vial up is not quite as large as we saw in the previous turn. Remy, of course, does have his Vengeful Pharaoh back in the graveyard again. Discards 5 lands.
Another important thing when playing Dredge is how much damage do I want to deal to my opponent with Conflagrate. Usually you want to get him to 10 lives so that your Bloodghast have haste. So it's very important to remind. Maybe you want to play your Life from the Loam first to get 2 more extra damage. You lose 1 card by playing the Life from the Loam, but you return 3 lands. But in this particular case, that was not a possibility because there was only 1 land in the graveyard.
Actually discarded 4 lands and a Stinkweed Imp. That's a lot better for the Dredge deck, having a big Dredger to get back in subsequent turns. So Remy Lefrancois has done a lot of good work. He's now got his Prized Amalgams in play, or will have at the end of this turn, which means that even though he's got lots of cards in the graveyard, if it worked out that Bogdan Velostrogov played his Rest in Peace that we saw in Game 2, now it wouldn't automatically put him in great shape. Bloodghast, Narcomoeba, 2 copies of Prized Amalgam. Those can potentially form enough of a beatdown team to make life difficult for Velostrogov.
Also something to remember when playing dredges, if don't discard all of your lands because you might need one to return the Bloodghast. Another nice trick is that you do not have to get back the Bloodghast. You can actually wait till your end of turn, or with a fetch land you can just wait till your opponent's turn, for example, to return the Bloodghast, which is a way to play around cards like Anger of the Gods.
So Zealous Persecution here. Ideally, Bogdan Velostrogov wants to be using it to get both sides of it, to pump his team and to shrink the creatures on the opponent's side of the board. Right now, that's not really an option, but he has got Timely Reinforcements in hand. He would be able to use that to generate 3 tokens. He's not going to gain any life as he's currently actually ahead on life. Looks like he's content to just pass things back here. 3 mana up plus an Ether Vial, so Spell Queller looking pretty good. Stinkweed in a dredge there for Remy Lefrancois. 5 cards going to the graveyard as a result.
Haunted Dead, another nice one.
Yes, another way of triggering prized amalgams. Remy Lefrancois there, whenever he's putting in Narcomoebas from the graveyard, puts them in upside down so that he doesn't lose track of which things can and can't attack.
Deck for 9. Yeah, this is going downhill for Bogdan. Even if he finds a Rest in Peace now, the damage has been done. There will be too many creatures in play. I don't really see. He needs to find some big blockers very soon. Timely Reinforcement will give him some time and reinforcements, but I don't think it's going to be enough to survive the onslaught.
And there are definitely enough unusual cards in this Spirit deck already that I'm not willing to completely write it off as over. I mean, if he had Terminus, say. Terminus is pretty good. Put the creatures on the bottom of the library. That's not going to put them back into the graveyard. That would be a big pickup. Stinkweed Imp simply getting cast here. Remy Lefrancois is at the stage of the game where he just wants to end things with damage. Another Bloodghast coming along. Has haste, but you know, all the attacking's already been done. Activates Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Remy says sure. Golgari Thug the Dredger there. So that's going to be a dredge of 4. Golgari Thug. It does have text if you actually play it. But you know what? Most of the time, it's simply there for the dredge 4.
And Rally the Peasant. So another card which Bogdan has to worry about. Being at 6 life means that any 2 creatures that pass are lethal for Remy.
Yeah, Rally of the Peasants. Flashback 2 and a red to give your team +2 power. Geistersent Traft the pickup there for Bogdan Velostrogov. Lots of cool spirits in this deck. Not sure how well they're really matching up in this particular matchup. Just has to pass things back. Lots of mana up, lots of options, especially when you throw in the Ether Vial as well, but he's got a fair amount of work to be done to actually make this all pan out.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attackers from Remy. All of them are, well, two unblocked are lethal. Even if he goes to 12, oh, he didn't play the Timely Reinforcement? Oh wow! So how is he gonna attack this? How is he gonna survive this attack? Seems like Remy Lefrancois is going to win this game. I don't see a way back. Maybe Bogdan is hoping to counter the Rally the Peasant with a Spell Queller, but there's no need for Remy to play it as long as he's got enough attackers.
I think we're in Ethereal Haze to prevent all combat damage into Terminus, into Rest in Peace territory at this point.
Oh, he does have a plan. Look at that. Zealous Persecution is gonna kill off quite a lot of creatures there. 2 Bloodghast, 2 Narcomoeba, and a Spirit.
Shrinks those prized amalgams down to 2/2s. Haunted Dead becomes a 1/1.
And only 5 damage left, so Remy might be looking to play the Rally the Peasants here.
And if that happens, we know that there's still Spell Queller that can get flashed in. So by my count, 5 damage coming through here.
Yeah, and Remy not playing his Rally the Peasant because he knows about the Spell Queller. He knows he has Conflagrate. Spell Queller says no to Conflagrate. And on the way back, it's only going to be for 0. So he's surviving one more turn, but now at 1 life. Still facing quite a lot of creatures and Bloodghast, which can come back
2
with
copies of
haste.
Timely Reinforcements in hand now.
Is he finding a way back in this game? Actually quite interesting.
3 blockers, 6 life. They're not spirits, these ones, they're just warriors.
Let's see. Spell Queller attacks puts Remy at 7.
Can he afford to attack with this flare? Looks like he says yes.
Is there still a land in Remy's deck though? That's the question, because without a land he cannot return the Bloodghast with the Bloodstained Mire. He's going for Dartmoor Salvage. That is the land he's looking for. Do I just think with Fateless Looting? That's 6 attackers.
Did Remy forget about a Vengeful Pharaoh there? Is there a Vengeful Pharaoh in this graveyard?
And there should be.
I think it might be right at the very, very bottom of his graveyard. So plays Dartmoor Salvage, gets 2 Bloodghasts. Still has Rally the Peasants in the graveyard.
I think Rally the Peasants is actually a sorcery. Is it? I should check that. Might be the reason why he didn't play it.
It is
no,
an
it's
instant.
an instant. Yeah.
I liked the play last turn to go with the Conflagrate.
Yeah, but if he went for Rally the Peasants and Conflagrate, then his opponent needed 2 counters.
So attacks coming in here from Remy.
6 attackers, 3 blockers. I think it's lethal. Even if he flashes in another blocker, he still dies.
Blocking a Bloodghast doesn't seem like the way forward. So that would have him. Does he have another Spell Queller? I think that's the only thing that will save him here.
He did a good effort last turn with the Zealous Persecution, but this turn might be the one too many.
There's the handshake. There was a Geist of St. Traft in hand that he could have flashed in potentially to block there. I'm not sure if that would have been quite enough even then. But one way or another, Remy Lefrancois picking up the win there, 2-1. He advances to 10-1. Fantastic performance from Remy there. Very intrigued to see how Bogdan closes out this day. Currently at 9-2, so still in the thick of it in terms of the fight for top 8. And if we got spirits in that top 8, that would be pretty cool. We will, of course, see more Magic soon enough. But first, these messages.